Most founders hire offshore to save money and end up with average talent that creates more problems than they solve. Logan Merrick saw this firsthand when building his 7-figure e-com business. While scaling the company, he turned to offshoring talent, traditional BPOs and traditional recruiters, and was just frustrated with the type of talent that was being presented to him. So he decided to build his own internal recruiting system. And through this, it actually developed into a new business. Today, he runs Willbound, a talent firm sourcing talent from the Philippines. But these aren't just your normal VAs that a lot of people expect to be found in the Philippines. These are high-level operators that can be input into your business and deliver outstanding results. In this episode, we talk about why most offshore hiring is broken, how Logan built Willbound to solve a real problem he had in a previous business, what founders get wrong when delegating, and the mindset shift that came from scaling fast, burning out, and starting over again with a completely different goal. If you're trying to build a lean, remote-first team that helps you buy back your time, then this episode's for you. Enjoy the show. Hey Logan, thanks for joining me today. So I've read some of your posts on LinkedIn, and we've also had a brief chat, and you've had a really interesting entrepreneurial journey, so I'm excited to get into it all.
Yeah,
And
thanks. Keep
first
having
off,
me.
thanks for joining me. And first off, can you tell us a bit about what you're currently working on, Willbound?
Yeah, sure. So, Willbound is a company that I started with my wife. It came off as an offshoot, basically, of the previous company that I was running, which was an e-commerce brand. I'm sure we'll get into that. Where I was having a really hard time finding the really high level talent, and I was specifically wanting to hire people in the Philippines. My thesis or the idea that kept coming back to me was where are these really high level people? Like the Philippines has got 120 million people. Where are the really, really smart people who are running the country basically, or who are running the higher level roles, operating in the higher level roles in that country? So you've got companies like KPMG, Accenture, you've got Thrasio, which is a portfolio company of e-commerce brands. You've got Canva. They all have massive headcounts in the Philippines, and they're not hiring, any person willy nilly. They're hiring the best that they can find. So I just wasn't seeing this quality of talent when I was working through other recruiters and BPOs and stuff like that. So I was getting kind of frustrated, and we decided internally we're going to build our own recruiting process. And it was expensive and it took a long time. But once we finally refined it, we were getting really, really high level talent. Like, for example, it was a beauty brand. We wanted to develop a blog that was going to become like a trendsetter. So we needed someone who was really, really strong in beauty writing. So we went to the Philippines. We found Cosmopolitan in the Philippines. So they write for Cosmopolitan Philippines, but they also write for the international company. And we found one girl who had been working there who then became a copywriter, and she understood SEO, and she was really, really strong writer. So super specific. She was a beauty editor who had a specific interest in hair. So it's really, really niche. It's really hard to find someone like that if you just post a job to a job board, or ask on social media, or ask for a referral or something like that. You have to go hunting for them. So that became our method. We went hunting, and then when I sold my e-commerce brand, around the time when I started winding that up for sale, I got one of my friends. He asked me if I could help him find someone, because he could see that I was working like 5 or 10 hours max a week, and I was running this multiple 7-figure business. And so he asked me, would you be able to help me kind of set up a similar structure, and just tell me what to do? And it's too hard to tell you. I'll help you do it. So we set him up with a general manager for his e-commerce brand, and then from there we hired also a media buyer, and then a graphic designer, and then a senior graphic designer, and a copywriter, and built out this team for him so that he could have a similar sort of lifestyle. And one thing led to another. He made some referrals. Those guys made some referrals, and then we were suddenly running this recruiting company, and it was a total accident. And I had to rope my wife in to help me out, because she's really good. She's really strong operations person, really good recruiter. She's recruited 500 plus people for events and whatnot, volunteers and whatnot. So she's really good at developing systems for high volume. And so now we're working with all myriad of companies. Most of the businesses we work with are e-commerce brands, but we don't exclusively work with e-commerce brands. Work with SaaS companies, vendors. We have a couple of law firms, accounting practices, etc. So we work with all manner of companies, but we work with founder-led businesses that are interested in acquiring the highest level of talent in the Philippines. Because the bottom line is, the better the talent, the better the outcomes. So
That's really interesting. And in terms of how you guys operate, you mentioned that you kind of went in to the businesses at the beginning and kind of helped them set up the structure. Do you still do that now, or is it purely like just hiring particular roles for a business?
yeah, so like as an operation, we are specifically hiring talent, but when we're working with our clients in the, let's say, call it account management or strategic management, whatever you want to call it, me talking to the clients, we're working on a strategic level. So we're talking about their, the org chart and what tasks should be done by who, what are the roles that we should hire in what order, et cetera, et cetera. And it depends as well. Like if you have a small business who's just looking for one hire, like a small e-commerce brand looking for one customer service manager, or are we a large e-commerce brand scaling 5x a year, who constantly needs to hire people? So it's a completely different level of strategy for each.
Interesting. And do you guys have like a database of killers in the Philippines, or is it on like an ad hoc basis where like, okay, you need this role, we'll go out and look for it, so it's very specific, or do you just have guys that are ready to go?
And it's a little bit of both, but for sure, like, so when a client comes to me, say you come to me, you say, I want to find a really strong executive assistant who's really strong in, has a very strong background in podcasting and social media management. So then that's a very specific requirement. There might be one person in the database who meets that exactly. So I would rather go to the market and find someone who specifically meets that requirement. If you said, I just want a customer service person and it's just any old customer service person will do, then we can lean on the database. But most of our clients are looking for that really top level talent and they want specific experience. So if you want really specific experience, like for example, we're working with the conversion rate optimization agency at the moment. They wanted to find someone who is a tech lead, who is also really strong as a project manager, understands conversion rate optimization specifically for e-commerce. That's pretty niche, right? So we want to find someone who has really high level experience across all of those. And that's not something that anyone would typically have in their database. You might have one person, but if I share one person with you, you may or may not jive with that person. But if I share 5 people with you who all have that background, you're going to jive with at least 1 or 2. Yeah. So it's not just the requirements, you also have to find the right cultural fit.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, and you touched on it a bit there, but what is kind of broken with how businesses hire today? Why do they struggle to find like the right fit?
Yeah, well, I think hiring has always been difficult. I remember even before I started recruiting in the Philippines, finding really good talent was really hard. And what's hard about it is, I guess, 2 things. One is that you have to, for wherever you're hiring, doesn't matter if it's locally or offshore, you have to look at a certain number of profiles before you'll find like ones that are actually good. And then you need to have a large volume of those profiles, the ones that are actually really good, before you can find one that has a strong cultural match. Then the other thing is that it's very expensive. Like these top employees are really expensive. If you take like the head of design for Apple, that's not a low cost person. Like that person's probably like 500,000, maybe more, per year. Probably over 1 million a year. I think Tim Cook gets like 75 million a year or something like that. So
Yeah,
Um,
something crazy like that.
so a head of design for a really high level company, they spend that much because the quality of talent is considerably different. So hiring anywhere, to find the best people, you have to make really strong offers. So it becomes difficult for the average business to acquire talent. And I think that, like, even I was talking to someone yesterday, they're looking for a big SaaS company. They're looking to expand their customer support management or customer success management function into the Philippines because they have most of their customer success currently in Australia. And I asked him, like, what's a customer success manager cost in Australia? And he said, probably around 120,000 a year. I was like, holy shit, okay, that's a lot. And he said, what does it cost in the Philippines? I said, well, if we're talking like apples for apples, so the same level of experience, native speaking English, et cetera, you're probably talking like 70% less. So, so it's a considerable, if you're talking apples with apples, like the same level of output, the same level of quality, same everything, except they're in a different country. It's like 70% less. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your questions correctly, but like the reason I started recruiting in the Philippines is because I want to find the best of the best, because the better the people that I hire, the higher level of intelligence, the higher level of creative problem solving that they can do, the less I have to do, you know? So one of the really difficult things about building a team or building a company is that eventually I have to delegate responsibility to other people. Yeah. So if I'm going to delegate responsibility to someone else, I need to make sure that they can do all of that. Otherwise, I can't let it go. And for everything that they can't do, for every problem that they can't solve, that problem flows back up to me. So it becomes my problem to deal with. That creates a limitation in how big I can scale my business. Because if all problems eventually come back to me, or if too many problems come back to me, then I'm hamstrung. So the better the person that I can hire at every level of my business, I'm not just talking like operations level, like management level. I mean at like tactical level everywhere. I should be looking for people who are creative problem solvers, because then I don't have to solve those problems, but it's expensive. So that's why we went to the Philippines.
Interesting. Like I'm not that familiar with the Philippines economy, but are most of the jobs available to people in the Philippines actually international companies? Like you've mentioned Cosmopolitan or Apple or something like that. Do they actually outsource a lot of their talent also to the Philippines? So most of the people in the Philippines are actually working for international companies, or are there quite a few local businesses too?
I mean, for sure, there's local market. There's a lot going on. You've got grocery stores, you've got agencies, you've got all kinds of businesses, accounting practices, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but the biggest, uh, don't quote me on this, even though I'm saying this on the record, but I believe that the biggest industry in the Philippines is uh, the business process outsourcing industry. I believe that's the case. It might be like, sneakily, and there's like secret oil or something like that, but I doubt it, because I don't think so. But from what I understand, the business process outsourcing (BPO) industry is the biggest export market. So, for example, there's all the teleperformance companies and telcos and these kind of
Yeah.
companies. They have massive buildings in the main cities within Manila and within Cebu and stuff, where they have floors of people who are just, it's just seas of people sitting at cubicles answering phone calls or responding to messages. This is business process outsourcing. So you're a telco, you call up this company and you say, hey, I want 50 people on this campaign for next month and for the next 6 months, and they'll fill those roles for you really quickly. And that's kind of like this rapid gearing up process is kind of like the backbone of the Philippines. And that's why most of the recruiting is done on the basis of this rapid recruiting model. Not many people are, this is not where you're going to find the best talent. Most of the best talent is, you know, basically elsewhere. The best talent's working somewhere in a company. They're really happy, but they're open to opportunities.
Right. And how does your experience as a founder help shape how you guys recruit for other founders? Was it just from experience? And like you said, you find these really talented individuals that can sort of just do all the work for you and you don't have the headache of it sort of filtering back up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, so, like, I guess I've built a couple of companies now. I'm on the 3rd one now. And what I learned, so my first company, it was complicated. I had a lot of people working for me, but there weren't many leaders and there weren't many people who, there were too many people who couldn't do their job really well. Um, and it caused problems for everyone else. So everyone who could do the job really well, and there were some really, really strong operators in that team, but there were too many people who just couldn't. So the people who could do the job really well wore the brunt of those who couldn't, and eventually kind of came to a head. And there were a lot of reasons why that business didn't work out, but that was one of the main problems. So it became a point of frustration for me at that time. Uh, I also started that e-commerce brand, and I knew that at that point, I knew that, like, the better the talent, the better the outcome. So I'm looking for the best talent that I can find. I'm working with all these professional recruiters and business process outsourcing companies, and I'm trying to find good talent, and I'm just not finding it. And so that was really frustrating. So it was, I guess my approach today came as a result of a personal frustration with low quality talent. And I don't say low quality talent as I'm not having a go at anyone, like, horses for courses. But if you have an important role in a company, let's say media buyer for an e-commerce business, it's a really important role. You have to have someone who's very, very strategic and really understands media buying. But in most of those roles, you find people who are not very experienced and who are not very good at this. That's very frustrating. So it just
Yeah.
doesn't scale.
Yeah.
So
That
when we're
makes
working
sense.
with our clients now, like, my responsibility to them is, trying to find someone who's really good for that particular role, who's going to help them scale to the next level.
Cool. And because you're so good at like structuring these businesses in this way, how involved are you in the day to day of Willbound now?
Mm. I like how you said I'm so good at it. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to fit my head out the door after this. Um, I think I'm like pretty good, at it, but it's nice that you would say that. um, what was the question again? So how am I working in Willbound? Like, how's my time spent in Willbound?
Yeah. So, like, how involved are you with like the
Mm.
current systems that you've set up?
Yeah, in the day-to-day operations, like, almost not at all. Like, most of my time, I'm embarrassed to say this, most of my time is on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time. But the long-term goal is to build up my LinkedIn account, to have an audience and have a community, um, and then launch subsequent services and businesses off the back of that. So that's kind of like the long-term strategy. Um, in Willbound itself, so my wife runs the day-to-day operations of the business, and she's really, really strong operator. She runs a really tight ship, and she's also, because she's come from a background of working in company cultures that don't appreciate people, she's very, very strong when it comes to, um, caring for our team and making sure that they have what they need to succeed. Not in a pushover way at all, but like, just she's just a really, really strong operator. Very, very smart, much smarter than I. I take all the credit, but she does all the work. Um, but in terms of the actual day-to-day operations, we have a very strong set of processes and structures. So the way that the structure works is basically the org chart is, Melanie is my wife. Then there's the head of recruitment, and then there's the talent solutions specialists. So talent solution specialists, they report to the recruitment manager reports to Melanie as the head of operations. So she only has one or two people that she actually has to speak to on a regular basis, aside from me. But yeah, so in that sense, it alleviates a lot of the pressure from her and feeds not the pressure, but feeds the work downwards.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like, I know on our in our conversation we had before this call, you said that Willbound isn't necessarily about scaling it to the moon, but helping founders buy back their time. Why did this model appeal to you more than chasing like hypergrowth?
Yeah, yeah. I think, well, so going back to when I had built my first business, I was 23 when I started that. 22 or 23, I started that. I was really, really ambitious, and I was super like interested in building what I was building. I was building a software development agency. We got we caught some really good win, scaled the business very fast, and I think at that point I got a little bit big for my head, and I became I was so successful at such a young age that I wasn't really successful because the business looked good from the outside, but it was it was turmoil on the inside. But I got arrogant, and I was just so growth focused. Like everything was about growth. We needed to scale fast, and that's why I wasn't taking the time to hire like the best people that I could find. It was just about moving fast, and et cetera, et cetera. And when that business failed, it really shook me. Like it really, whatever ego I had, fucking smashed it to pieces. I've got plenty of ego left, but like but at that but at like it really put me back on myself, and then I had to kind of reassess like what do I really want in my life. And at that time I was so the business crashed. I was 26 years old, 26 or 27, and I think it was 27, and uh, I really had to think about what do I really want, and I was super burned out and demoralized. And so I started this e-commerce business. I just wanted a lifestyle. I just wanted space just to rest and recover. I was so sad, so upset, and upset at myself for how I had been behaving. Um, and then I realized, throughout that period, I realized that like, all this like hustle culture stuff, this is fucking bullshit. Like none of this is really real. I found a mentor. I had a bunch of mentors, and I read a bunch of books, and I was realizing like there's a lot to this concept of 80-20. There's a lot to building systems. There's a lot to taking your time, doing things properly, setting up the right structures, hiring the right people, doing less but achieving a lot more. And so I started taking this approach, and it really worked. I've been talking for a while. I can't remember what your question was exactly.
No, well, that's exactly what I wanted an answer to. Like, I was asking about what resonated with you and like why you made the decision to not focus on hypergrowth, and
Yeah.
that resonates with me too. I think culture's kind of shifting a bit because like 10 years ago, the numbers felt like they really mattered. Like, saying what you exited for, how much you raised, how many employees you have, like all of those were like flexes on Twitter that kind of proved that you were doing something and you were actually successful. And I think this whole concept of like what people call lifestyle businesses, which I'm not really sure is like the perfect term for it these days, but like lifestyle businesses where it's like you with a few operators, you're the face of the company, but it's making tens of millions. Some of these guys are making a lot of money, and they just have really good systems in place, and they're able to focus on other aspects of their life and have quite a good balance. And they don't need to worry about money. And I think that's really appealing to me too. And it's something that I'm working towards building, because I think that lifestyle just makes more sense. Like, why would you? I don't know. Some people do love the grind, but why would you grind super hard to maybe not even make as much money when you can just work smarter, not harder, and live and build the life that you actually want to live?
Yeah, that's like in a nutshell. That's exactly how. Like I had this kind of thought when I was 27, which is that's 9 years ago now, and yeah, like it just completely opened my eyes. And the only mistake that I made was because I got so burned out at that time. I was actually building my personal brand way back in 2014. 2013, 2014, I had a blog, I had YouTube and stuff like that. All of that stuff is like gone now because it's too embarrassing. Um, but the mistake that I made was, it wasn't so much a mistake, but I because when my business crashed in 2017, um, there was like a lot of PR about that, because the business I had built, because I had this personal brand, we were known as like one of the best workplaces in Australia and all this sort of stuff. Had a lot of PR built up around that brand. So when the brand collapsed, it was a lot of like, yeah, like a lot of press around that, in all like the major small business publications and stuff. So it kind of tarnished my name for a long time, and I was getting a lot of messages from people saying, what a piece of shit I was, stuff like that. And not that harsh, but like it was a bit, yeah. So
That's what it
I
felt
went,
like. Yeah.
yeah. So I just wanted to disappear, and so I didn't do anything for a long time. It was only last year that I decided, okay, I want to put my head out a little bit more again and see if it's safe.
And has it been safe so far?
Yeah, so far so good. Yeah. But like I don't feel embarrassed about it anymore, and I've been talking openly about it. It's like I don't love the fact that I lost my business, but at the same time, like I learned so much from doing that. So it's not a total loss. And if someone wants to have a go at me about it, then okay, that's your opinion.
And are those old videos and personal brand bits, do they still exist, or are they gone forever?
I think I deleted it all, but I don't know. Like no one will ever see it.
Because that I find that so interesting, because like the real personal brands are the ones that people really resonate with, and like if you could find those, I think it like helps paint an even more colorful picture of like your personal brand and like the journey you went through. Now that you're sort of like openly talking about it more and coming to terms with it, and you're not as uncomfortable with it,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people could probably learn from the stuff and the like you reflecting on those times too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I guess one of the reasons why I don't like it is like, obviously I look very different. I was so young looking. I still look pretty young, but I was so young looking. And but it's more that at that time I was saying a lot of things, talking a lot of shit like about things that I didn't really know, I didn't really fully understand, and um and it just comes across very arrogant. When I watch myself, I'm like, "You didn't know what you were talking about," you know? I still don't know those things. How can I talk about that back then? And so now when I'm like, say if I'm producing a piece of content or I'm writing or I'm talking about this, I'm very hesitant to say anything that I don't know to be certain. Because I just don't like, yeah, it's for me it feels arrogant. So yeah. Maybe I'll have a look. I'll see if I can find anything. I'll shoot you something and you can just tell me if you think
Yeah,
it's
well, because I mean, that also makes perfect sense, and I think a lot of people can resonate just with that idea and it's on its own. Like at 23, to be running a successful company in Australia, like you can't expect that 23-year-old to have all the knowledge to actually do everything in that business. But at the same time, you need to put forward, like, the whole concept of fake it till you make it. Like everyone's kind of just like fumbling around, sort of learning as we go. And so it makes sense that you had to put that sort of frontward facing sort of face and persona on. But I think it also makes just as much sense that like looking back, you're like, shit, I was just bullshitting and sort of making my way through it. And it's like, I think a lot of people can resonate with that. There's a lot of founders and stuff that I've spoken to who also started quite young, and they also say things like, looking back on it now, it's like I had no idea what I was doing, but like the company was making millions, and I was like, okay, let's roll with it. Like if people come to me and ask me questions, I'm leading this company, so I've got to pretend like I have an answer, because someone at the top of the company has to have all the answers. And that's like the assumptions they made when they're younger. And then as you mature, you realize you don't have to have all the answers. And that also humanizes you and creates a better work environment. But like, you don't really know. And also the vibe, like 5 to 10 years ago, of running a business was like the person at the top had to have all the answers. And so it put a
yeah.
lot of pressure on people leading. So yeah, I think that's really cool.
What was the first piece of content you ever produced? Let's say professional content.
Um, well, yeah, I would never call it professional content, but I I feel like my life has been a process of taking the easiest steps to work towards the bigger goal. Because I always found the bigger goal daunting, but like I like the ideal and thought of it. So I wanted to create content. And so I worked backwards from what's the lowest hanging fruit where no one will probably see it, but it feels like I'm actually taking a step in the right direction. So it was kind of like pussyfooting around and like a cowardly way of starting, but um, it was writing a blog on a personal website. So it was like starting a personal website where I had my interests on there, and then I started the blog. And my first or one of my first pieces was about quitting alcohol, um, and it was my reflections of having done it for a year. And so and I wrote about that, and I found it easier. Like I could share it on LinkedIn and Facebook. I could share the link, and it felt less intrusive because hey, you can click this link, but like you're just scrolling past a link. It's not like a whole body of text where you're like, holy shit, this guy just wants to be looked at and stuff. And so just grappling with that. And then slowly over time, I realized that like no one actually gives a shit. They're focusing on themselves. And if they do care, they'll engage or read it. And if they don't, they'll either block you or just scroll past it. And so just rather put it on them and let them decide whether they want to engage with that piece of content rather than you doing the thinking for them and worrying about, oh no, like what will they think or do they want to see this post? Like, and also the algorithms aren't really showing it to that many people anyway. So yeah.
Are you still not drinking?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Now 5.5 years in,
Oh,
almost in
damn.
June.
What made you stop? I know this is going off track, but what made you stop?
No problem. I got really sick. So the drinking culture in what's kind of similar to Australia, I think in South Africa, there's a huge binging culture. Um, you're almost eager to get your first drink at like 14, 15 years old. Um, and then you're drinking till you black out, and that's pretty normal. And you're doing like 3 days in a row, university days, sometimes four. Uh, and it's all pretty normal. And like if you're on a boys tour I was on a boys tour in Greece when I was like 20, 21. um you're going every day, and if you're feeling shit or you're super hungover, it's like, oh, hair of the dog, keep going. And like
Yeah.
that was all just normalized for me, and I'd always reacted negatively to alcohol, particularly in my stomach, and no one else had those similar hangovers or reacted the same. But it was the hair of the dog mentality was kind of like everyone that did it, and they kind of thought like, oh, that's just your way of reacting to it. If you just drink a bit more, you'll be fine. And so I had that approach all the way up until I got really sick. And it was a night out that I consider normal on the grand scheme of things. Like it wasn't a huge night, but my body just sort of gave up. And I started puking blood, and um, I was like, okay, this is a bit more serious than like a normal hangover. And but like I took the normal approach where I was just kind of trying to brush it under the rug, and I was like, well, if it's still a problem in a week, because I had work for the whole week, and I was like, "No, I don't want to go to hospital, and if it's a real problem, then like I may have to stay at hospital. So I was like, let me give it a week and see how I feel, and I just felt horrible the whole week, like something was really wrong. And so I went to hospital, had an endoscopy, and they said I had acute gastritis. And so um, they told me to chill for 3 months, and I did. And then it was New Year's Eve, and my wife's family was visiting, and so we had a typical New Year's night. Had like a bottomless brunch and or evening brunch, like all that stuff, like unlimited drinks. And then uh, the next day we had a dinner, and I went to the family dinner, and I couldn't eat anything. I and Annie, my wife's uncle's asking, like, "Don't you like Chinese food?" And I'm saying, "No, I do, but I'm not touching. I can't eat the plate. I can't touch a plate. I can't put anything on the plate. Like it's like no ways. And I kept getting up to like mock charge. Sorry, it's a lot of detail, but like mock charging in the toilet. Like I got up 7 or 8 times in like a 1.5, 2 hour dinner period. So it kind of also looked like I had a cocaine habit or something. Like something was definitely up. There's something wrong with this guy. And that was the trigger for me where I was like, what the hell am I doing? Like, if this substance is like, everyone reacts differently to alcohol, and I have no judgment over anyone who drinks it, but like, it was just really fucking me up. Like, it was really screwing with my body. And I'm putting myself in embarrassing situations where I can't even like eat the food, or I'm getting up to the bathroom all the time where people start questioning like what I'm doing or what I'm up to, or like whether I have a drug addiction. I was like, that's like, there's no positive coming from this anymore. Um, and so I decided to stop there and then on the 1st of January. And luckily, Annie, my wife, decided to join me. And so that was really helpful having a partner. But then, yeah, we haven't touched it since. And
Wow.
I'm really happy I don't anymore.
Good on you. That's awesome. Me and my wife, we don't really drink either. Like sometimes we'll have a couple of drinks, but it's super rare. Not that we have horrible problems like this, like that I would quit cold turkey as well. But it just doesn't feel like it does any good, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
And
massive
like,
waste
I
of
get
time.
it from time to time. And like I said, I don't have anything against it. It's just for me personally, like it didn't agree with my body. And I kind of felt that progressing over the years from when I started at like 15. Um, but I kind of just ignored it. And then after quitting, you sort of start reflecting on things like how I use it as a crutch in social situations and how I became reliant on it. And it opened my eyes to a whole lot of things, and like how it gave me brain fog and all these things I didn't realize, because like giving up for 3 months wasn't really something I did. It was always like 1 or 2 drinks in a 3-month period. And like the longest time I hadn't drunk for was probably in high school, because I went to boarding school and like I couldn't go to a bar or a pub like on the weekend. So yeah, it was really eye opening, and I just like learned a lot about myself too. But yeah, glad I did it.
Interesting. Wow. That's a hell of a story.
Thanks. Well, yeah, enough about me. I wanted to ask about so you've worked with fully remote teams like across continents, and what's been the hardest part about managing talent globally?
So I guess my first business was 100% in-house. We started 100% in-house, and then we were hybrid. So we became a hybrid organization. I think the problem with hybrid, for sure, is that you have basically 2 operational models. One is remote and one is local, and it almost feels like, and this is a big mistake that people make, but that the local team is the team and the offshore team is the offshore team. And it's like, it's not really the team. And so you don't treat them the same. Whereas the only model that I've found that works consistently is when you treat everybody the same. So it doesn't matter to me if today, if like, and I see this issue still happens. To me, it doesn't matter where you are. I was talking to a guy yesterday about his org chart, and he was saying that, yeah, like I have this person here, she's in charge of the PH team and then the Philippines team, and I have this person here who's in charge of the Australian team. And I'm like, wait a minute, but like then within each of those teams you have you have this discipline, this discipline, this discipline. Like it's a conversion rate optimization agency, so you have CRO, tech, you have the developers, you have the designers, and then you have the analysts. And on this side, you also have the same thing. So like you're just doubling up the work. What makes sense, and his whole team is actually remote anyway, so it's perfect for him just to start to blend the org chart so that you have him at the top, then you have your operations manager. Underneath the operations manager, you have tech, you have CRO lead, then you have design, or however it works, and then boom, boom, boom. And within those line of reporting, you have your team, whether they are remote or not, doesn't matter. They're in there. So that's one thing that I've noticed, that the mistake that people make is that when they go remote is that they'll have this like division between offshore and onshore. That's the biggest mistake that I've seen. A lot of people will assume that working in-house is better. I don't think that it's better. I don't even think, like, maybe if you're like a law firm and you have to have an office where people can come and meet you, but I think that the benefits of working remote are huge. You can work with the best talent that you can find in the world, as opposed to the best talent that you can find in your town or in your immediate vicinity. So you don't have that geographical limitation. The other thing is that you can find talent that is lower cost because you have access to places like the Philippines, or there's India as well, and various different places. Africa is becoming a hotspot for offshoring as well. So you have you have the benefit of leveraging this financial geo arbitrage situation. I think that pretty much ties it up. I mean, there are of course other issues, but those are like the main ones.
Yeah. And do you think founders make that distinction mistake because the local talent, they're normally paying more, so they consider it like a more valuable hire, even though the skills are basically the same?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. Like when we work with, and I think in general, like the Philippines, I'm assuming it'd be the same for other countries as well, India, etc. The assumption is that talent from those countries is of lower quality. And I haven't seen any evidence of that. I have seen the evidence of habitually hiring lower quality people and not using a strong method or process for finding high quality talent. But I haven't seen any evidence that there is a lower quality talent pool in the Philippines. So when they hire someone, or when I'm talking to someone, let's say if I'm talking to you and I say, oh, we're at the moment hiring for a VP of growth, which is like the head of marketing for a e-commerce brand. This e-commerce brand is currently, they're about to crack 50 million a year, and they're growing at 4 to 5x. They've been growing at 5x per year. They're moving, next year they'll grow at 4x per year. So in 1.5 years time, they'll be around 250 million a year. They're wanting to hire, they've built their entire team in the Philippines. He's an American guy, but he's built this entire team of the Philippines. We've hired more than 50% of their team. And if I was to explain that to you, it puts the quality of talent in the Philippines in a very different light. Whereas most people think that, you can find half decent customer service people over there, maybe like, support, like an assistant or something. No, you can find people who can run the entire business. Like that's what I was doing in my e-commerce brand. I had a general manager who was running the day-to-day operations. I had she's like incredibly intelligent, very creative problem solver, very good with people and managing politics internally and stuff. But you would habitually assume that the people in the Philippines aren't capable of that, because our in the Western world, our exposure to the Philippines has been mostly call centers and like fairly low quality freelancers.
Yeah, that makes sense. And after exiting, what made you want to get back into building something again?
What was it? I exited. So I actually started building this other business kind of before I exited. So I decided I'm going to sell my business. I decided like 3 times for 3 years in a row I was going to sell my business. And then each time I went to get an evaluation, I got offers on the table, and I was like, nah, we'll build it a little bit more. And the next time I'll do the same thing again and the same thing again. And then third time's the charm. So I decided I think it was January 2024, I'm going to sell the business. I'm fucking done with it. Now's the time. Because it was a beauty company for women's hair extensions. So it wasn't really up my alley in the sense of like, I didn't feel a deep sense of purpose and connection with that product. I was happy that we were doing good work and we were, selling good product, but I just wasn't really, I didn't feel like a deep sense of passion for that. So I wanted to do something that was a little bit close at home. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna do this. I was working very little, and I kind of wanted to put myself into something. So I'm gonna sell it. And at the same time, I had this guy who started asking me if I could help him out. And it was actually there were, I think, 3 or 4 people who asked me around the same time. But I only offered to him that I would help him out. And yeah, so that it sort of became that I was already running this agency. And then because it's fairly, I guess, low touch for me, it meant that I can run this agency, and it's still like I still have a really good lifestyle. So
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully that answers it.
Yeah, it does. And what would you say are like the biggest lessons that you've learned throughout these different businesses that you still carry today?
Mm. That's a really good question. So each business taught me something different, right? So the first one really taught me not to be so arrogant. Also, like I was so young, and I was trying to be someone I'm not, and I think that was like there was a benefit in doing that, where I could portray this maturity that wasn't really there, and this leadership quality that was actually, on the inside, I feel much more timid. Um, the next and I worked really, really hard. I worked long hours, really, burning the midnight oil. I burned myself out more times than I can count. And it was really frustrating and damaging, really, really damaging. I've got gray hairs too. You can't really see, maybe a little
Me
bit, but
too.
I've got, yeah, from all the drinking, yeah. Yeah, I've got, yeah, so I really burned myself out. And so then I went into my next business, and that business taught me that using leverage, you can achieve a lot more with a lot less effort. And that was a huge lesson for me. I was like, wow, like I can, I mean, I was doing like $7,000 per hour worked.
Wow.
That's good, right? Like you got to admit that's pretty good. And I was super chill, like very, very relaxed, maybe too relaxed. But it was, and I had a lot of freedom because I was working remotely, and etc. So, oh, and that was the other things, like I could work remotely. I didn't have to. My first business was in-house, mostly in-house. It was hybrid, but like I had a team of 30 plus people in Melbourne, and I was going to the office every day. And so you kind of, I don't know, like traveling into an office every day, you lose a lot of time. I don't see any benefit in it. You're getting interrupted all day, every day. Yeah, I didn't see a lot of benefit in it. Going remote, it's like someone Slack messages me, I'll respond when I feel like it. But if someone comes into my office, I don't have much of a choice. So that was really nice. So having this freedom, it kind of just opened my eyes up. Then this business, what I'm learning is that I kind of already had the vision for it to start with, but I'm learning that there's a great deal of benefit. And I think you already know this as well. There's a great deal of benefit in building an audience, building a personal brand, building an audience, and developing I guess like a community around that audience, so that when you and like understanding what are their pain points, what do they need, so that you can deliver solutions in the form of products and tools and services, developing kind of like an ecosystem of information and products and services. And that's kind of, I guess that's where I'm at the moment. So I'm wanting to build that audience with my LinkedIn, and then eventually probably YouTube and whatnot, and maybe a podcast is on the cards. My only thing is like, it's a lot of work,
Yeah, but like you've got access to the talent and stuff that could make it a lot easier. I
Yeah.
mean, having a podcast, well, like I did it on my own, and yeah, it is quite a lot of work. But if you have the right people in place, then it's literally you jumping on a call like this one, and you just speak to someone for an hour. Maybe you you prep a few questions, but you can get someone on the team to help you with preparing those questions, like deep research and stuff, and they could have some suggested questions, and then after you look at the research, you could add a few of your own. But like, yeah, I think like if you have the right team in place, and with podcasts is probably like doesn't have as much leverage as YouTube. So like if you are looking for leverage, I'd probably suggest YouTube first. But podcast for like networking and meeting interesting people, I've loved every second of it.
Yeah, interesting. Well, so when does this publish?
In a couple weeks.
In a couple of weeks. Okay, I think I can talk about it. So there's a podcast that I'm host for at the moment. None of the episodes have gone live yet, so that's why it's not. I haven't talked about it or anything. But there's a podcast which is run by. It's funded by the local government. They're wanting to attract businesses to one of their programs, and there's an agency that kind of like runs the production side of things, and then they've outsourced even the actual like podcasting production to another company. So there's 3 parties, and they asked if, because I know the production guy, he asked if I wanted to be one of the hosts, and he asked if I would know anyone else who might want to be a host. So I suggested my friend. So now we're both hosts for this podcast. And literally, it's like we just turn up. They've given us the brief, so we read it. We do a review for like 45 minutes the day before. We turn up on the day, meet the guests, just shoot the shit for like an hour, like talking, like really interesting conversations with some high level people. Like there's like the CEO of this $1 billion crypto company, and I think we've got this SpaceX guy coming next week. So like really cool guests that we're talking to, and but all we have to do is just turn up and get paid. It's crazy. It's a really nice situation.
Yeah. So if you wanted to create a personal one, it's like similar vibe.
Yeah,
I just
like
think you come up with excuses. I think you could get going quite quickly.
Yeah, I know. I'm like sitting here making all these excuses. Yeah, but that's a team of, I think they've got maybe 8 or 9 people, maybe 10 people running that.
So I think that's
Overkill.
unnecessarily big. Like I'm still doing this all on my own. And it is remote, which is slightly different because I know doing it in person adds a sound guy and a video guy. But like if you are doing it remotely, all you really need is like a guest booker who has an SOP of like the exact type of people you want. It's going to take a bit of back and forth because they can create lists and you're like, that person's a no, this person's a yes. And then eventually they'll have it nailed down to the exact type of person they want. And then I see that person could also do the research into the guest and create the questions. So, and then one other person will be like an editor to edit the short form and edit the video and chop it up in the style you want. I think if you have a team of 2 people, you could get it done.
Well, I think you've taken away all of my excuses. I knew there was a problem coming on this podcast.
So yeah, before we end, I just have a few entrepreneurial like focused questions. And I was wondering, like, what advice would you give to someone sort of stuck in a job that they were itching to start their own thing?
It's a good question. I guess it depends on the person's situation, do you have an idea? Do you not have an idea? Have you started anything with your idea, et cetera, et cetera? But let's say taking a person who doesn't have an idea, they're stuck in a job and they want to start something. I know a couple of people like this, and I would say they don't take this advice, but I would say start building an audience, whether it's a podcast or it's LinkedIn or it's Instagram or whatever it might be. Start building an audience and get really deliberate with it, like study this. So let's say if I was to do YouTube, I'd buy a course, step 1. Then I would implement everything I learned from that course, and then I would buy another course and I would start implementing that, and then I'll buy another course, or just and watching other YouTube creators and their content and studying other successful creators and just implement until and eventually you're going to see it'll start going like this, and it might take a long time. It could take years, could take 2 or 3 years before you start seeing any real results, but that's where I would start. And like, let's say with LinkedIn, for example, I started posting on LinkedIn daily, I think in February or March. And I was doing it like sporadically before that, but I think daily from like February or March. And by now, I'm getting, meeting cool people like you. I'm getting leads like nearly every day, like if not every day. I get like podcast interviews. This is interesting stuff, and all kinds of opportunities come away. And that's only after a couple of months, 2 or 3 months. So if you want to quit your job, like this is a good way to get started, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a few things you touched on there that I think is an attitude that a lot of founders have, where it's like, firstly, it's take action, because a lot of people buy courses and they feel like that's the work done,
Yeah.
but it's actually like taking action on those courses, which is extremely important. And then, yeah, the building brand side, me too. Like I started my company like basically the start of the year, and I also started in like February, end of Jan, posting every single day, because I've been doing it in the background for people when I worked at agencies, and like I saw the value in it, but I kind of also felt like I didn't have a specific direction or focus. And so I was posting bits about my podcast, things I was interested in, like AI tools that I came across. But there was no sort of targeted focus. And as soon as I was like, okay, I've seen the power of LinkedIn, I've done it for so many people. I need to just like lock in, focus on something and start posting about that consistently. And same thing happened to me. Like I've seen and I've done for clients, like the leads start coming, you have interesting conversations. But you've got to really like take action and like focus in on it, or else you kind of just, I actually wrote a post about it this today, where it's like people try to spread themselves too thin to start to. And you think, oh, like this successful person is posting on Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn. But like you said, you're focusing on LinkedIn right now, and like you're making that work. Once you nailed that, I'm sure you'll start, like you mentioned, YouTube and a podcast. But like if you spread yourself too thin too early, it's you then like give up because you're not really seeing traction on any of them. But if you go all in on one, I'm pretty like you can almost guarantee that you will get traction, because you start learning the ins and outs, you know what works, what doesn't, and you start seeing the results. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Let me refine now that you've said that, that's all like really, really good stuff. So let me refine my answer. My answer would then be start building an audience. Everything that we've said is, correct. And then continuously and consistently work on your strategy, because your strategy is just like, once you really understand like what people need, then you know who needs it, what to offer, what to talk about, et cetera, et cetera. Everything becomes easier.
Yeah.
That's obvious because you're doing really well on LinkedIn. Like you get a lot of engagement, a lot of people like your stuff. So working on your strategy, and then strategy includes also, I think, having a good offer. So working on that offer and optimizing that. So you're optimizing in terms of you're learning how to do what you're doing better in terms of posting and engaging and commenting and stuff. Then working on your strategy and who you're targeting and getting more and more refined. And then the offer is constantly working on getting that more and more refined. Once you're making a certain amount of money, let's say if you've got your bases covered plus some, you're going to start feeling a little bit stretched. Before you get stretched, start building systems and structure, and find people who can start taking over some of the grunt work that you're currently doing that's taking up a lot of your time, that's easy to delegate, that allows you to do the things that are higher value. So for example, I mean, for me, it would make sense to start finding someone who can help manage some of the day-to-day marketing stuff, so that I can spend more time engaging on LinkedIn and doing sales calls. And then eventually those sales calls are going to need to be covered by someone else because that's not necessarily my highest value work. My highest value work will eventually probably be creating more content and engaging and going on podcasts and, this type of thing, down the line. So just looking at like, what are the bottlenecks that are stopping me from doing the highest value work, and how do I find someone who can do that at a really high level? And when it's a really high level, I don't settle for average, because if you settle for average in building your team and your system and your structure, or even your strategy, you're going to get average, and you're only
Yeah.
going to be able to achieve to the degree of like whatever is the weakest link in your business.
Yeah. And that's something I'm noticing too. Like, I started because I know it's important to like get started and have a basic offer, but I'm already trying to focus my offer a bit more and refine it. And I'm basing that off of like posts that resonate, that brought in the most leads, all that type of stuff. And so, yeah, it's really important to keep reiterating. And like you said, hiring like the best talent, particularly in like personal branding, it's a representation of you. So it's not something you can really fuck around with. It's um, like some people will get someone to operate for them in their DMs and stuff, but like that person has to be really good if they're doing it because they're saying things on your behalf.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense.
Well, like even if you were to get someone to completely do all of your LinkedIn, like that's a big task, right? And I think for a lot of people, they could actually do better with that. But if you had someone to do all of that and you're already doing it really well, then you have to find someone who's really, really good. It just puts that finding the top quality person into perspective, because you should really be applying that same thinking across everything. Because is there really anything in your business where you can afford to do it kind of like shit? Probably not. Well, there's few things that you could afford to do it like shit, but most of the things that you do, you need to do them like at a elite level.
Yeah. And how do you stay motivated? Like after having an exit and stuff, like I find it interesting how entrepreneurs stay motivated after like the money thing doesn't become that much of a need.
Yeah, yeah. I think so. Motivation to me is a very interesting word, because I think most people misunderstand it. I think you understand what it means, but most people think of it as like, I get up every morning and I beat my chest and I'm like, now I'm motivated, or like I'm gonna flick on some Robbie tea and I'm gonna get really, really motivated. But actually, motivation is a feeling, right? And the feeling is intrinsic. So like, what is my intrinsic motivation? Well, if I get hungry, my intrinsic motivation is going to be to go and eat something. It's a very like felt sense thing. So your motivation will determine what you do. And if you are only working for money, then once you have it, then you're no longer going to be motivated to work. And that's not wrong, right? Like, it's not a problem. I don't see that as being a bad thing. What is a bad thing, I think, is when we suggest to ourselves that we should be more motivated. I don't think that we should be more motivated. I think we should be more aware of how we feel, what is actually true. And because you might be motivated, like, oh, maybe I really want to make some money, but maybe I'm scared, So what's true in that situation is that I am motivated and I am scared. Is it wrong to be scared? Or is it just a fact of life? I am scared. There will be a reason for it. So paying attention to that reason is important. It's relevant. And maybe getting to the bottom of why you feel scared, or why you feel like procrastination is fear, right? So why am I procrastinating? What am I scared of? I don't want to override my fear. I want to feel it and I want to do it anyway. There's a big difference. So
Yeah.
motivation is like, it's a really interesting topic. It's so fucking basic, but it's so complicated because of how we think about it. And all these like motivational speakers and stuff. And I think that there's a place for these things, but I think for the most part, most people don't need motivation. They need to go easier on themselves. Like, stop trying to scale something to the moon when you don't want to. For example, do what you're intrinsically motivated to do, and don't do more than that. And you should live a pretty happy life.
Definitely. Yeah. I think my question wasn't it wasn't a great question because it's very broad and it could have been more targeted in the sense that, like, yeah, intrinsic motivation is the way to go. And I'm
Mm.
curious, what intrinsically motivates you now? What keeps you going?
Yeah. Well, um, if I stop working, then I would just spend my money, and then that would run out. So, so it better to do some work. But I also really like working, and my wife really enjoys working. You feel like you have a sense of purpose. One of the big things with when I was working, when I was building my e-commerce brand, I was working so little, and I was earning like really good money. So I wasn't very motivated, and I wasn't motivated by the work. I wasn't motivated by the purpose of the company. I tried so much to kind of like make it something that I would be motivated for. I just wasn't motivated. And then as soon as I started this, I'm like, I'm sharp. I'm interested. I'm intrinsically motivated. I want to work. I'm looking forward to the next day. And there's so many interesting things that are happening. There are some pretty uninteresting things that are happening too. Like frustrating issues. But for the most part, I'm very motivated. And it's not financial, because as a business you have to turn a profit, but it's it's more than just financial. I really like working with other founders and helping them build a system and a business that allows them to have what they want, what intrinsically motivates them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I like that a lot of founders, once they've achieved initial success, are motivated by other things, whether that be just purely for the fun of the game, to win the game of life. And they see the money going up as sort of like a score, and that's kind of why they're playing. But yeah, that's really interesting. And to end every episode, I ask my guests if they have a question for me.
Oh, okay. I did have a question, but I have so many questions because I said to you before, I'm very curious about you. But um, what motivates you?
Um, so I would say I think eventually I'd like to build a lifestyle business, but my business is still in the early stages where finances is, I'd say, the biggest motivator. Because I know when you get to a level of financial freedom, uh, I think I've done sufficient work to switch that motivation to something else. Because enjoying playing the game and doing work that I love and stuff are also ingrained in that motivation. But I'd say priority number one at the moment is financial. Because also my wife quit her job to move here, um, and she's not really looking for something at the moment, and so I kind of like putting those kind of pressures on myself too. I think that is also motivating. And so it's being able to support my family um, financially and also build a business that I enjoy working in.
Interesting. And what would an ideal life look like for you in, let's say, 5 years' time?
I think it's running a business that helps people where I feel like I'm actually making a difference. Getting people to where they want to be, while also building something similar to you, where there's systems in place that means that I can manage my own time and be quite flexible with my time while also making a sufficient amount of money.
Nice. And what is the biggest thing that stands in the way of that right now?
I don't think anything stands in the way. I think it's just putting in the work and um, like I'm seeing the progress and traction. I feel like I'm working towards that. So yeah, I don't think anything is standing in the way apart from maybe any limiting self beliefs, but I'm working on those as they rear their head. But yeah, I don't think anything's sort of stopping me at the moment.
Okay, yeah. Maybe a better question would be, what's your biggest challenge at the moment?
Um, That's a good question. My biggest challenge is probably financial and time. It's like doing most of it on my own at the moment, but also like speaking to someone like you, who could help me hire some talent. It's like I want to get to a place where I can comfortably hire that talent because I know the impact they'll make. And so it's like figuring out where that point is where I could comfortably hire, because I know how much of an impact even like first full-time hire will really make.
Yeah. But yeah, yeah, it's like chicken or the egg, isn't it? Cash flow
Yeah,
or bandwidth.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And so I'm picking um, cash flow at the moment.
Got to
But
pay bills.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so like even speaking to you now and stuff, it's like hopefully in not too long, we'll be having a conversation
Happily.
about yeah,
My the way I started Willbound was because I was like, well, I'm never going to be talent sourcing. Like that's just never, and my wife is never going to be talent sourcing. Like it's really like laborious. It takes a lot of time. So from day one, we had a team of 2 people, and but like of course I was at the time borrowing those as resources from my previous company, and then when I sold that company, I in the contract I carved them out so that I got to keep them in Willbound, and by the time that we did that sale, and we already had a considerable cash flow, and I think that one of the main things was just making sure that so I had constant flow of leads because we were getting a lot of referrals, and like our entire business is basically built on referrals. Now it's a lot of LinkedIn as well, but so we had referrals and repeat work, and um, and we geared our profit margins, so our gross profit margins, to in a way that I knew how many clients we would need or how many sales we would need to make each month in order for us to be covered. So yeah, I'm not
yeah,
sure if that helps in any way, but yeah, that's how
yeah.
I approach it.
That's currently what I'm doing. Because it's still relatively new. I'm now getting to the point where it's calculating that sort of pipeline, and um, you know, how many outbound plus inbound equals calls equals converts to sales, and how many of those do I need to like grow at a suitable pace. And it's kind of just working backwards, because sales is kind of like a numbers game. If you're filling the pipeline with enough people, um, the end result is an increase in income. So yeah, that's kind of currently what I'm working on.
And so are you still doing like social media management, copywriting for other personal brands as well, or you've stopped that now?
No, that is my business.
Oh, that's
Um,
your business. Okay.
yeah, so that's what I do at the moment. So I do the personal branding for founders, um, and yeah, which is why I speak about it so much on LinkedIn.
That makes sense. Yeah, I thought maybe it was like one of these courses or something like that you were doing.
Oh no no. Although I feel like down the line doing like a lower ticket course option is really good for lead gen. So that's something I want to consider. But um, yeah, it's like also you don't want to spread yourself too thin just yet, and so it's like building up that pipeline, and then that is a definite next step, to sort of target clients or just interested leads at different offer values, so you can sort of capture them into a funnel, or as some people call a flywheel, and sort of nurture them over time, and then eventually become talent. You don't want them to sort of go to waste, and also give them a lot of value up front.
Yeah, yeah, that's big low hanging fruit for me at the moment. I keep saying, "Oh, I'm going to make a lead magnet. This week is the week," and I just keep putting it off.
What
No
kind of
more
lead
excuses.
magnet?
Hmm?
What kind of lead magnet would you make?
So I think that the the type of client that I like working with are businesses that are, let's say, anywhere from your stage through to um the ones that we would want to try to attract is like anywhere from your stage through to like maybe 1 million plus revenue. And we have like 8 and 9 figure brands that we work with, but that's not who I would want to be targeting. That's circumstantial. We even have at the moment talking to $1 billion company. So, but it's circumstantial again. It's not who we're going out targeting. So we would be targeting these businesses that are establishing, but are trying to find their way in navigating the exact same issues. Like what is the priorities? What should I do first? How should I structure things? How do I find someone who can do this job? And kind of try to help them through that process. So a lead magnet that I had in mind was maybe either a guide for like some of the things that you should be doing, or something more specific would be a quiz that guides you to exactly where we're based on your responses to exactly what you should be doing right now. So it's a lot of work putting it together, because then you have the email flows and stuff as well that comes off the back of that. But anyway, what do you think? What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think those are both useful tools. And it sounds to me that oh, sorry, I don't know if you can hear the mosque in the background, but he's going off. Um, uh, I think the guide is probably a lower hanging fruit one. Yes, the questionnaire could be more useful for both parties. It's more useful for you because then you're collecting data on like the types of businesses that are interested, what's happening in their businesses, and then you're giving them a targeted outcome. But I feel like you said, that takes a bit more to set up. Whereas if you have a guide to start, it's a start, and that's my opinion.
Yeah. But which one do you think would be highest value? Probably the quiz, yeah.
Probably the quiz. But also I feel like creating a quiz like that, you could get really, really detailed and spend so much time on it so that the targeted outcome is like hyper specific. And I feel like you could tweak that over and over again. So it's also like, it seems like a bigger undertaking. And I think I'm also looking at like lead magnets now and thinking about which ones would be like a high value one to use. But that also isn't too much time to spend on it. Just to get something out initially, and then you iterate and tweak it and build on it.
Yeah. So like my biggest, I guess, problem is that I can overthink these things for days. And but what I keep coming back to is, well, if I do a guide, I still have to do design and stuff like that. So there's still a fair bit of work involved. And then only to eventually do a quiz anyway. So may as well do a quiz to start with. Like that's kind of my thinking.
There's a quiz builder. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I think it's called Score app.
Yeah.
By Daniel Priestley.
Love Daniel Priestley.
And that also has, yeah, me too. There's actually a good episode on, I think it was it Chris Williamson's podcast?
Yeah,
I think it was Chris Williamson's. A recent one. Yeah, really good. But yeah, but I don't know. I think putting something out there and then iterating and maybe working on the questionnaire as you've got a lead magnet out there already is the move.
I think you're removing all my excuses. Now I have to kind of get my shit together.
That's the goal. Well, thanks for joining me today, Logan. I really appreciate it. If people want to find out more about you and Willbound, where can they do so?
Yeah, just connect with me on LinkedIn. So Logan Merrick, or if you want to check out Willbound, it's willbound.com.
Great. Thanks, Logan. Really appreciate it. And chat soon. I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Thanks for listening. I really appreciate you making it all the way to the end. I hope you enjoyed the episode. One more quick reminder before you go. I have a weekly newsletter by the same name, Another Excuse, where I cover 4 topics: something that has changed my perception, a tool that could be useful to you, content that is actually worth consuming, and a concept that I try break down and explain. If this sounds of any interest to you and you need a kick up the arse, then you can subscribe at the link below. Thanks for joining me again, and I'll see you next week.